to the third annual UC One Resolution Public Debate and Benefit of the Los Angeles Metropolitan Debate League of the President. My name is Shirkus Hanan, one half of the 2020 Los Angeles City Champion along with the debate Martina. We usually are in downtown Magnolia High School and downtown Los Angeles today. We'll actually have the rare opportunity of witnessing a debating show. There are 5 all 6 of debaters on the stage today. We'll be teaming against their partners. We're excited to have you here with us this afternoon. It's so far to celebrate the incredible important necessary work that the Los Angeles Metropolitan Debate League Land was founded in 2000 with just 4 Los Angeles public high schools. To the annual policy debate portal, over 30 public high schools serving more than 600 students per year. We're committed to restoring access to a competitive policy debate throughout LA's most underdeserved policy public schools. Our program consists of several elements. We recruit, develop, and train teachers and serve debate coaches. We organize and host recruitment events to attract students. We develop a debate curriculum for class and national programs. We staff and host 10 elite tournaments annually. Provide sponsorship membership for students who compete at the highest level. National tournaments. We offer a week-long debate workshop at the University of Southern California. We offer college writing seminar. We partner with a number of run universities to connect Western to debate. We offer career pathways. We offer mentoring fellowship initiative and our student debate in the National Association for Urban Debate Legal Championship Tournament. We recorded finals this year in part of Los Angeles to come the crown. For those of you who are new to policy debate is a speech competition which the team composed of 2 students advocate for against the resolution to become for policy change. The United States federal government issue national important policy debate is one of the most rigorous academic studies who can participate. It combines literary analysis, research, critical thinking, public speaking, organization, advocacy. In order to prepare for the competition, students spend hundreds of hours in each season recording news articles, sociology journals, as well as rehearsing their presentation. Debate helps develop the most critical and competence to succeed in the college. We have typically breaking down competitive policy debate to showcase motives and move hard symptoms in the competitive debate program because we are such a political policy debate. Instead of 2 debaters going head to head, we're showcasing 6 debaters from 3 or more competitive teams this season. And again, thank you for joining us tonight. Enjoy the debate.
Good afternoon. Can we hear it for Sharika one more time, please? Welcome to the 3rd annual You Say You Want a Resolution public debate. For those of you who are new to debate, that is called spreading, and it's a tactic in debate that allows the debaters to get their arguments out because it is a timed activity, so you want to get out as many arguments as possible. For the sake of this debate, we promise you we're slowing it down, we're shortening the lengths of the speeches, and we're really making this an audience-friendly debate so you can be a debater and have many years under your belt and know what's going on. You can be a first-time person coming to the debate. So we're excited to welcome you here, and we're really happy to have all of these novice and rookie debaters here. Can we hear it for the novice and rookie debaters who are in the house today? So in order to get us started, we've created what's sort of a master of ceremonies of the event, who's going to be like a color commentary, take you through the different movements of the debate. We've really deconstructed it. Traditionally, you'll see two teams of 2 that will be competing in debate. As you can see, we have more than 2 debaters on stage, so we've really broken down a lot of the different speeches. And then at the end, we will have a round of rebuttals with 2 rebuttals each, 2 on the affirmative side and 2 on the negative. And the audience members will get to vote on who is the winner. That'll be a rematch of our city championships round. And inside your bag, you will see paddles with green thumbs up for the affirmative and red thumbs down for the negative. So get ready for that at the end of the debate. But without further ado, it's really my honor to introduce 2 people that are really going to help give us an inside glimpse of the debate. One person will be doing a live flow on the screen, and that's Dr. Joel Lemuel from CSUN, who's the director of the forensics program there. And he'll explain a little bit about what flowing is. And then the person who will be our commentator is a LAMSL board member and also the head of the debate program at Harvard Westlake, Mr. Mike Beats. So it's my pleasure to hand it over to Mike Beats, who will take us through this round of debate. There you go, Mike.
Thank you. The round, like Michael mentioned, is going to be very truncated. For people that don't know what the resolution is, it is the United States federal government should substantially increase its security cooperation with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, in one or more of the following areas: artificial intelligence, biotechnology, or cybersecurity. The affirmative is going to present a plan which they have to prove is not currently happening. They have to suggest a change in the status quo or the current situation, and that change has benefits and it's worth doing. They will be outlining their plan as well as the areas that they believe will, they'll call them advantages, and those are going to be the areas that they believe that they will improve the lives, improve security, or whatever they wish to deem as what's worth improving. The 1AC is the first speech. It's called the first affirmative constructive. This debate would normally have, or a policy debate would normally have 2 constructive speeches each. but just because we shortened it, they're each going to do one, and then right after their speech, they're going to give the negative will ask questions of the affirmative. Cross-examination is used to clarify or to find inconsistencies with the affirmative case. It's basically the only time that you're going to see the debaters go truly head-to-head is during this cross-examination time.
And then there are arguments for the negative side as well. So I will move between these tabs when each debater is talking about a different point. These numbers exist because we try and, to the best of our ability, signpost for the audience, right? So you want to know what argument are we talking about? We will give it a label, and also whenever possible, we'll give it a number. And so the debaters will try and follow those conventions as well. And I might have to readjust these numbers as as we move along, but that's the gist of flowing.
Okay, the one I see is done.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Sharika Sultana, and I'm in 11th grade right now. And I've been debating in Lambdal for the past 2 years. And the most memorable is connecting with my haters. I'm just kidding. When when we all went to nationals, June and Delmi and me and David, we were two opposing teams from two different schools, and we had just went head to head with one another to even qualify for nationals. There was this immense fear in me, and I confided in David that we would constantly be stepping over one another to win, and it did happen. But what I was surprised was to find out that they were actually human. June and Delmi were kind people, and we ended up forming a bond through debate and kinship that would not have happened without our competitive fire. The fact is, debate brings you together. Even while you're cutting articles to beat one another, you still find ways to go out and eat after the round and share fun moments and give polite shade towards one another. The community I've garnered in just 2 years of policy debate is one that I'll hold for the rest of my life, and one that has given me opportunities and a new light that I've never experienced otherwise. Success in debate isn't possible by yourself, and I know that sounds cliche because everyone says it, but it is incredibly true. And I think Joseph told me once that you'll never remember the wins that you get, but the community will stick with you forever. So in this debate, we are on the affirmative team believe that the United States federal government should cooperate with NATO to set international standards that require human control and oversight when lethal autonomous weapons are utilized. In November 2012, the Department of Defense, DoD, releases policy on autonomy in weapon systems, formerly known as the DoD Directive 300.09. Despite being over 10 years old and even being revised earlier this year, the policy remains frequently misunderstood, including by leaders in the U.S. military. According to Gregory Allen, director at CSIS, a think tank in Washington, D.C., the Pentagon does not currently require human control for artificial intelligence and weapons, even though some military readers can be quoted saying that this was the case. While most likely out of ignorance of the letter of law, this is still very concerning. Because of the undeniable facts surrounding the dangers of autonomous weapons, we propose that the United States cooperation with NATO to set international standards that require human control and oversight when lethal autonomous weapons or laws are utilized. Advantage 1 is human dignity. If our military wanted to, it is currently allowed to have fully autonomous AI. These fully autonomous weapons are not just weapons that use AI to support military operations, but rather are operations. Imagine, fully autonomous weapons deny human dignity because they cannot comprehend the inherent value to an individual human life and reduce people to unfeeling calculations and numbers. Even if AI saves lives in very few instances, when it comes to autonomous weapons, it destroys the human dignity that gives values to our lives. We must always remember the infinite and incommensurable value of each person, even when the other people are enemies in war. Autonomous weapons will never be able to comprehend this. A machine, bloodless and without morality or mortality, cannot fathom the significance of using force against a human being and cannot do justice to the gravity of the decision. Each instance where force is being used against a human being requires another human being should decide whether it is to cross the threshold. In this debate, we must ask, even if lethal autonomous weapons can do proper targeting, should machines hold the power of life and death over humans? While respect for human life involves minimizing the number of deaths and avoiding arbitrary or unjustified ones, respect for human dignity requires an appreciation of the gravity of a decision to kill. It matters not just if a person is killed or injured, but how they are killed and injured, including the process by which these decisions are made. Before taking a life, an actor must understand the value of life and the significance of its loss, which fully autonomous weapons cannot do and cannot respect humanity. Due to their lack of emotion and legal and ethical judgment, these weapons would face significant obstacles in complying with the principles of humanity. Those principles require the humane treatment of others. Humans are motivated to treat each other humanely because they feel compassion and empathy for one another. As machines, fully autonomous weapons are not sentient beings capable of feeling compassion. Rather, they are pre-programmed algorithms, which do not work well in complex, unpredictable situations. It would be difficult to create such judgment developed for both history and an individual life. In fully autonomous weapons, and they could not be pre-programmed to deal with every possible scenario. They would make life and death decisions based on algorithms. Advantage 2 is cohesion. Our second reason for our plan focuses on the effectiveness of our international military operations. Currently, NATO does not have a coordinated position on the ethics of AI. This undermines military and political cohesion, which undermines NATO militarily. According to Stanley Lockman of the Center for Security and Emerging Technology, significant differences in ethical approaches in AI and defense could risk political incoherence and undermine coalition success. Politically, alignment on ethics is important because shared values are the foundation of U.S. alliances. Further, if different ethical standards for AI development are followed, it would mean that some countries have higher thresholds for what they develop, and others may perceive them as not equally sharing risk to life, and thus political cohesion influences operational effectiveness. This cohesion is essential for an effective alliance. We argue that the greatest threat to NATO interoperability and cohesion is the lack of standards in AI. NATO has arguably been the most successful alliance of its kind, and much of the success can be attributed to its cohesion in the face of threats. At the heart of this cohesion lies two important notions: burden sharing between members and their interoperability. While running full speed ahead in AI development seems promising for military prospects due to the development of new classes and weapons with great military potential, it is asymmetrical adoption among various NATO allies which could lead to significant interoperability problems. These type of risks are not small issues. They risk the alliance's effectiveness overall, especially when enemies like Russia seek to exploit weaknesses within NATO for their own gain. So in conclusion, NATO armed forces combined are more than the sum of the single parts. This is attributable to interoperability. In the NATO context, standardization plays a critical role in coordinating among allies. NATO won the Cold War because of the bonds among allies. Such bonds are not primarily political, military, or diplomatic. They are cultural, ideological, and ethical, and are rooted in human rights. Thus, we advocate for our plan, a move towards pragmatic and legal action.
All right. On the first advantage, is death good?
No.
How would humans being in charge of those weapons not be the same brutal process?
That's the entire first advantage. It talks about how a human killing another human is more ethical because a lot of the time they'll actually decide whether the killing is a good idea. That actually prevents a lot of deaths, whereas autonomous weapons are not able to have that.
Does the actor of the murder change how good or bad the murder is?
Yes.
How?
Because human beings, they have empathy and compassion. That's advantage 1. And because of this empathy and compassion, they're honestly thinking about when the killing is necessary or not. And we argue that if human beings are in control of weapons, a lot of the times the killing will actually decrease. And a lot of these killings that you're saying actually will not happen.
All right, cool. So are some deaths better than others? And how does this justify murders that were done by humans?
No.
Okay. On the advantage 2, do all countries in NATO take a similar stance on the use of laws?
No.
Okay, then how do you guarantee that there would be cohesion between all NATO allies?
We argue in the advantage that the reason that there is not cohesion and a similar stance right now is because there are different standards. We argue that if all these standards do come together, then they will increase interoperability. And also, the reason that cohesion isn't happening is because of differences in tech manufacturing. We argue that if everything is standardized and in the same ethics standardization, then the creation of weapons will also become standardized, which will plateau.
Cool. I guess, how is Russia a threat?
That's the second advantage. We argue that Russia exploits weaknesses within NATO for their own gain. Which
Okay,
is why
so
cohesion
how
is
long has
necessary.
NATO been, like, weak, I guess?
What do you mean?
How long has NATO had this, like, weakness in their systems.
We argue that NATO is not weak. We argue that in order to increase their operability, that's why cohesion is necessary. We argue that when weaknesses come, enemies like Russia seek to exploit weaknesses, which is why we reference the Cold War.
All right, cool. So if NATO has been divided over support of Ukraine, why hasn't Russia invaded?
Rephrase.
If NATO hasn't been able to like send weapons or like military support towards Ukraine, then why hasn't Russia invaded Ukraine?
They have.
Okay, cool. If Russia is such a threat, why haven't they attacked a weak NATO according to the 1EC?
They have.
And how?
Okay, regardless, what we're
In
arguing.
what ways has Russia attacked NATO?
We argue that because of NATO's weakness, that's what allowed for the war in Ukraine to happen.
We're calling.
Yeah, vote affirmative.
Okay, for the negative construction starts, the affirmative, you can see they've narrowed the larger resolution that I read at the beginning, and what the affirmative does is they present a specific plan. Now the negative, the negative can basically say we should keep things exactly the same. The negative can take any strategy they want. All they have to say is that the plan is a bad idea, and it's not, and the disadvantages of doing the plan are worse than either maintaining the status quo, or they can offer a counter plan, doing something else that can solve the same problems that the affirmative outlined. They can offer questions that would undermine the assumptions of the affirmative case. Basically, the negative can stake out any position they want and multiple positions that they want to in order to defeat the affirmative. In policy debate, the affirmative has the burden of proof. The negative, that's why they speak first and last. The negative has the advantage of being able to basically throw anything at the affirmative, and for any one of those reasons, you can vote for the negative. After that, the affirmative will be able to cross-examine the negative. So the 1NC can start now.
My name is Jun Kwan, and I'm a junior at Port of Los Angeles High School, and this was my third year debating. I'm unsure about what I want to pursue in the future, which means I'm open to internship offers after this debate. If you need a trustworthy intern, please evaluate me during this round and feel free to reach out after. I'm also uncommitted to college, so I would love to be a student of yours if you're a professor. And yeah, my most memorable moment of the season was probably winning Urban Debate National Championship or being awarded the Debater of the Year at Lambda. And Sharika did a perfect job of describing the benefits of debate outside of the competitive aspects, so I won't go into it again. Moving on to the speech, I'll be presenting a few reasons as to why we should reject the plan. First is the critique. At its core, NATO is a Western project that promotes extra-legal militarization that defies international law and security agreements in the name of targeting perceived enemies. According to international peace movements, the purpose of NATO was stated as being to safeguard the common heritage and civilization of its members, that is, the capitalist system, by promoting stability and well-being in the North Atlantic area. As a result, since its establishment, the relationship between NATO and Russia has continually been strained by NATO's clear intention to recruit membership in all of the countries on Russia's western and southern flanks. Just this year, NATO has expanded to include Finland and soon to be Sweden. With these actions under consideration, Cockburn asks us to consider, instead of asking who's in NATO, we ask who isn't. NATO is clearly a project to line up as much of the world as possible behind the US while defining and isolating certain perceived enemies. NATO's very existence as a military alliance of Western states is in contradiction to the global notion of solidarity and international agreed structures for peace and security. Before I continue, I think it will be important to define what securitization means. Securitization in international relations and national politics is a process of state actors transforming issues in regular political issues into a matter of security, thus enabling extraordinary measures to be used in the name of security. So let me explain. Joanna Davidson, a professor at Boston University, explains that with the dawning of the post-Cold War era, issues of poverty and underdevelopment were increasingly linked to the outbreaks of conflict, therefore leading thinkers to problematize underdevelopment as a threat to security. This thinking creates the link between security and human rights considerations. We can see this type of thinking in the way that Affirmative had constructed their plan. Remember how they strategically placed their two advantages together. human dignity, and military operational cohesion. They use human dignity and ethics to justify political strategies that is ultimately not for a universal benefit, but rather for the benefit of Western powers. We believe that before taking political action through things like the plan, we should engage in a process of desecuritization. This is a process that seeks to reverse the logics of the affirmative by academically and rhetorically resisting their threat constructions. The way that the 1AC is constructed needs Russia to be a threat in order for the plan to look desirable, meaning that in order for you to think that the plan is a good idea, you need to first have the thinking that Russia is a threat in the first place, which is bad. And Rita Floyd explains desecuritization as a reverse of securitization. It is the unmaking of securitization. Securitization can lead to human security, for example, if real threats are neutralized, but it can also lead to insecurity and self-fulfilling prophecies. Thus, we urge you to think and question whether or not the affirmative is actually a good idea. Second, the counterplan. Even if you're not persuaded by our criticisms of their justifications, NATO is still not the best international organizations to set standards on autonomous weapons. Instead of the United States cooperating with NATO, we will propose a counterplan. Our counterplan is for the United Nations to adopt ethical principles to ensure human control in military artificial intelligence systems. According to Matthew Bolton, professors of political science, the UN is best to create global norm for human control over AI because a growing number of UN member states have already called for a prohibition on laws. At a minimum, there seems to be a broad agreement that it is necessary for countries to have an obligation to maintain meaningful human control over the lethal use of forces. UN leadership would restore the credibility of global governance and international cooperation much better than NATO. Third is the disadvantage. Their plan has unintended consequences on NATO's stability and military strategy that outweigh the benefits of the plan. General Andrei Lenato, while the commander of NATO's Allied Command and Transformation, can be quoted saying, NATO has to rethink its operating models and organizations with a prime focus on speed. Under his leadership, NATO has taken bold steps in this direction. They established an innovation branch, a place where our innovators are protected and nurtured. In an address to NATO's political leaders, he urges that the ethical reflections such as a plan are essential but must not slow us down in the exploration of the potential of this technology. Ethical limits, such as the ones proposed by the affirmative, undermine military readiness and deterrence. The extra focus that the plan requires on ethical limits will force NATO to spread their resources, and that's bad. That gives a strategic edge to other nations and slows down the development of military technology. Alex Wilner, a professor of international affairs, argues that while some countries are openly against providing AI with the rights of means to kill individuals without human intervention, other countries appear far less concerned. China and Russia and others may be more willing to delegate lethal decisions to our AI. He believes that under certain conditions, doing things like the plan can help these countries in a tactical, strategic, and coercive advantage over those inclined to keep humans or on the loop. We must maintain our strategic edge when it comes to militaristic applications of AI. Maintaining technological superiority deters Russian and Chinese aggression. In a world where they gain superiority, power shifts and can eliminate bargaining, escalating conflicts to nuclear war. Michael O'Hanlon, a researcher in foreign policy, and James Miller, a military strategist, believe that in a slow pace of innovation in key areas of military technology could be exploited by Russia or China. On to case. Finally, even if you don't look at external issue, the plan itself does not resolve what they claim it does. We have multiple arguments. First is that all weapons violate human dignity, not just AI. And two, human dignity is not theoretically coherent. The act manipulates it for political reasons. And three is competing militaries that utilize autonomous weapons have an incentive to disagree over where to draw the line between autonomous AI and other types of AI. Additionally, Russia has already been in war with Ukraine. It means they don't have an incentive to challenge because they would have to create two avenues of war. And lastly, Russia is peaceful. They will only attack NATO if NATO drives them over the edge.
Do you believe that NATO is irredeemable?
The 1NC, or my negative constructive, does not necessarily take a stance on whether NATO as an entire alliance is redeemable. We think that the problem in your 1AC is your rhetoric and how you frame Russia and China to be villainous threats.
Okay, but isn't Russia a real threat to Ukraine?
Okay, well, that's not the context that your rhetoric is being spoken in. We think that Russia's invasion of Ukraine was a result of NATO encroachment. We think that NATO, doing whatever to expand their borders to Eastern Europe is what caused Russia to feel threatened, which in return forced them to invade into Ukraine.
Okay, why can't we use organizations to save lives, and why is Russia's fear enough to stop global good?
We think that your justification to save lives is bad. We think that you painting Russia as a threat, and as a result, giving that urgency and saying if we don't do this to save lives, then Russia will attack us.
Okay,
Giving
well,
that urgency paints Russia as a bad villain, and we think that has a worse impact.
okay, well, we're not painting Russia as a villain because in reality, you can see in news that they have attacked Ukraine, that they have done genocides and they've killed.
Well, that is
a
our
lot of people.
those are our case answers. We've outlined that Russia, and that was also cross-sex. David did a great job on isolating how Russia has
Okay.
not exploited a weak NATO.
Okay, why do you read a counterplan to increase securitization when you run the critique? How can we trust you?
What does that mean?
Like you under the critique, you read like what does securitization mean? Like you gave a counter interpretation, like counterplan.
We think that even if you don't buy that our criticism is valid, we think that there are still better ways to do the plan on a policy-making level. So even if you don't think that even if the policymakers and the judges think that your rhetoric is good, at the end of the day, there is still a better way to do the plan that's not through NATO.
Okay, onto the CP. The UN has tried to do global standards on lethal autonomous weapons before. How is this counterplan any different from the Geneva Conference of 2021?
We can make that
2021
same
was
argument. We will just answer this with the NATO and NATO allies have also tried to do lethal autonomous weapons and global standards. How is this not like?
I don't think NATO has done it. I think the UN has done
Okay,
it.
so is it UN as an alliance and was it the UN's alliance or was it allies? Because if we're talking about allies,
It was the alliance, the UN alliance, which is what
okay,
did
sure.
the
Then
Geneva
you can
Conference.
read that in your next speech.
Okay. Okay, onto the DA. How do ethical limits undermine military readiness and
We think
deterrence?
that setting ethical limits forces the alliance to work over too many different parts of the military. We think that their extra
You don't
focus.
think that they're sufficient enough to be able to take care of different problems at the same time?
I'm not sure that I understand the question. Our argument is that the plan forcing NATO to work on another sector that is not just military innovation will force them to use their resources on ethical limits. We think that you making them spread the resources is bad because you slow down the rate that they can have accelerated the innovation in the meantime, which gives Russia and China an edge to invade.
Okay. How don't ethical limits and military intertwine?
Because military innovation has to do with developing artillery and arsenal. We think that human rights and ethical standards and standardizing whatever the plan does is completely different from military innovation.
Okay, we're gonna hop into the rebuttal speeches now. In the rebuttals, new arguments can't be made. So, all the arguments that are going to be made in the rebuttals are going to revolve around arguments that you've already heard. They can't bring up new arguments. Let's talk quickly about what the negative strategy was here. Like I mentioned before the speech, the negative can basically do anything to disprove. They can make any number of arguments to disprove the affirmative. And you can see in cross-examination that the negative can even make arguments that might seem contradictory to one another, because it then becomes the affirmative's responsibility to define or to describe why, or to argue why contradictions in your position are bad. But if the negative can just say, well, we're going to give a bunch of reasons why doing the affirmative is bad, even if they contradict, that doesn't mean that each of them can't be independently prove that the affirmative is bad. So their first argument with the critique was just arguing that when we frame all issues in terms of right and wrong, in terms of security, it gives us a mindset of us versus them, or it makes us more militaristic, and we should not be doing that. The counterplan argued that instead of doing NATO, we should be going to the UN, and then their disadvantage argues that if we have humans, that if we do the affirmative plan, we're going to fall strategically and militarily behind Russia and China, and that's also a bad thing, and that would lead to worse outcomes. So then they made arguments on the case, arguing that Russia's not really a threat anyway, and so on. So they gave a bunch of reasons why doing the affirmative is a bad idea. In rebuttals, they'll have some sort of what a judge kind of wants to see is each side narrow to their best arguments and sort of write their ballot at the end of the debate round. So I'm not going to talk between rebuttal speeches, but you should be thinking about which side is more persuasively narrowing and giving you the best reason to vote for their side. And it's the debater's responsibility to weigh the arguments. Acknowledge, yes, these bad things could happen, but our advantage outweighs and vice versa.
Hello, my name is Ryan Upston, and I will be presenting the first affirmative rebuttal. I am a senior who's been debating for Hearts Academy the past 4 years and will be attending UC Berkeley this fall, planning to major in political science. Throughout my time in debate, everything has been memorable in one way or another, good and bad. And while I am outgoing outside of debate, debate has allowed me to harness that energy and use it to develop my skills further as a student and towards my personal life. When my English teacher discussed debating, I was pretty skeptical about it. I've never heard of debating in this style, and I only saw just a lot of research and reading that goes into it, which I dreaded. However, I tried it out anyways, mainly because it would get me out of my math class, and the more work and effort that I put into it, the more I came to love debating and pursuing policy-oriented career paths. While June had many arguments for why you shouldn't vote for the plan, I do not find them that persuasive. In this speech, I will directly respond to the arguments he made in his speech, but first let me remind everyone what our case argues. Currently, there is no requirement for lethal autonomous weapons or laws to have human oversight during operation. To address this, we propose that the United States cooperate with NATO to set international standards that require human control and oversight when laws are utilized. There are two advantages to this plan. First, fully autonomous weapons deny human dignity because they cannot comprehend the inherent value to an individual's human life and reduce people to unfeeling calculations and numbers. They say that all weapons are inherently dehumanizing, but we believe it is important to make a distinction between lives taken by humans and those taken by AI. To give a program machine the ability to decide to kill a human is to abandon the concept of human dignity. Humans are sometimes accidentally killed by machines, but for an autonomous robot or drone to be programmed to kill a human is to reduce a rational being to merely an object. AI will never comprehend a human being as human. AI cannot distinguish human life from other types of objects. AI can never consider that their target is a being with rights and that deserve respect. Second, NATO members do not have a cohesive strategy on the rules or ethics around AI. This risks AI from different countries not being able to operate together. This lack of cohesion hurts NATO's ability to be effective militarily. A strong military-ready NATO is needed to maintain peace in Europe and minimize conflicts with Russia. They say countries will never agree, but NATO principles for responsible AI use allow allies to cooperate fully. Through the issuance of standards, allies can align their broader agendas with one another and bridge the gap between responsible AI with best practices and standardization that industries can follow. Now to address their off-case positions. First, the critique. While we should always have a critical eye on our political leaders, we believe the plan is still a good idea. We believe you can still do the plan and vote affirmative while academically and rhetorically deconstructing the justification that we gave in our first speech. As Roland Blaker, IR professor, explains, the key challenge in international relations scholarship is the widespread and dangerous process of forgetting the distinction between theoretical concepts and the real-world things they mean to describe. The dangers we present are real because IR deals with some of the most difficult issues, from genocides to wars. Upholding one subjective position without critical scrutiny can have far-reaching consequences, but this cuts both ways. We can use multiple explanations to understand the motivations of countries. Whichever reason you believe, though, the plan will still be a good idea and you should vote affirmative. And even if some of the predictions we make are problematic, it's theoretically useful for understanding how countries interact with each other. Rejecting our understanding outright is ahistorical and causes worse violence by greenlighting ethically untenable positions that allow for autonomous weapons to be used in the military. Next, we will defend that the securitization in the context of Russia is good. Putin invaded Ukraine. He is expansionist, and it is not unrealistic to think he will continue. Although Putin mostly referred to Ukraine in one of his political speeches last year, he has given reason enough to suspect that he may have territorial ambitions in other parts of the former Russian Empire, particularly in Estonia and Latvia, which both have sizable Russian-speaking minorities. Russia's pre-invasion demand that NATO withdraw its forces stationed in Eastern Europe after 1997 gives suspicion that it would also threaten Lithuania and Poland on the border of Kaliningrad exclave. But Russia poses a military threat that cannot be defended against the political military cohesive NATO. Finally, academic and rhetorical critique alone fails to address the real concerns that have raised. And their criticism doesn't result in a shift of global human rights policy. Instead of it condemns analysts to political paralysis. Second, their counterplan. We believe that the UN and NATO should cooperate on the plan in order to be able to solve today's complex security challenges. NATO and the UN face a growing need for cooperation. The organization's relationship has intensified over the past years, fitting within the trend towards a stronger role for regional actors in global security. NATO and the UN should further enhance their institutional coordination to set international standards that require human control and oversight when laws are utilized. In the long run, in the face of pressing security challenges and determined political leadership, teamwork between the UN, NATO, and the United States can lead to a more effective cooperation in some of the most treasurable regions of the world. Finally, their disadvantage. Tech innovation is already stalling due to predatory merger deals allowing massive tech industry consolidation. Christopher Cole, an expert in regulatory work, points to a 2021 congressional hearing focused on possible overhauls of American competition laws to prove this. In this hearing, advocates and business figures testify that the U.S. economy faces a growing threat from the large companies' merger and acquisition strategies because they aim to knock out startups and growing rivals, then take the advantage of market power to continue and profiting off old technologies. The trend is already stalling U.S. innovation and harms consumers. And we believe our plant ethics attract top AI developers and improves the reliability of the weapons they make. This improves NATO's technological superiority. It also prevents the wars that they fear so much. According to Lauren Kahn and Michael Horowitz, the senior fellows of the Council of Foreign Relations, enacting policies like the plan and committing to lead the world in AI safety could cooperate a ripple effect in the U.S. defense enterprise and the private sector by putting a premium on safe and ethical AI. In turn, this makes it more likely that military and civilian uses of AI is reliable. Such signaling will also likely improve the reputation of the U.S. military with Silicon Valley and AI researchers whose concerns about military uses of AI have loomed large. For all these reasons, we believe the plan is still a good idea.
I know I said I wasn't going to talk again, but I did want to just quickly go over the strategy that the affirmative used to counteract the positions that the negative ran. So when a team runs a critique or a counter plan, they are creating a new position. They're saying we would so the negative said we should rethink securitization and we should reject the affirmative because they promote securitization. The affirmative responds to that by saying we can do both. So the negative has to present positions that the affirmative can't say we can do both to. So the affirmative says we can do both those things. That's not a unique reason to vote against the affirmative. That's just a reason why we should implement the critique while we're also doing the affirmative. The same thing goes with the counter plan. They make an argument, the affirmative makes an argument in this last speech saying that there's no reason why the UN and NATO can't cooperate as well. So it's another example of a counter plan that doesn't compete, at least according to the affirmative, that they can do both, that they can work with the UN and with NATO. So there's no reason to vote for the counter plan uniquely. And instead, the affirmative could do both of those things. And then lastly, on the disadvantage, the strategy that the affirmative can take can say that the problems that the disadvantage outlines, that is innovation and so on, that decline is already happening. So it's not a reason to vote against the affirmative if the decline is already happening. So those are ways that the affirmative can deal with all of the negative positions very quickly by just talking about the competitiveness of the critique or the counterplan, or the non-uniqueness, or it's already happening when it comes to the dissad. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Hello, fellow debaters. Now, how did they get us here for yet another Saturday? My name is Imani Harvey. I'm a senior at Hearts Academy, and I will be majoring in pre-medicine at Grand Canyon University. I will be presenting the 1R, also known as the first and negative rebuttal. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've only been debating for about 1.5 years, and I've had no prior experience before. I started varsity this year, and although it's been really rough, my partner and I, Ryan, have accomplished so much. Debate taught me a lot: how to read fast, different topics I wouldn't think about doing extensive research about, and many more. But most of all, it taught me how to lose. Only because those losses were lessons in disguise. Unlike all the champions I'm surrounded around right now, me and Ryan are 3-1 no-break warriors, okay? We have lost, we've won, but we overcame most of all, I would say. And those losses, they helped me build myself. And all I can say is thank you, not only to debate, but also Lando and all of my fellow debaters as well, and Ryan. While my friend and partner Ryan had many arguments for why we should vote for the plan, I still believe it's not a great idea. In this speech, I will directly respond to the arguments she made in her speech and remind you all of the alternatives you should consider. Remember, their plan does not actually protect human dignity or make NATO more cohesive. First, I will focus on their claims about human dignity. The distinction between artificial intelligence and a human intelligence when it comes to decision-making is actually backwards. If anything, autonomous weapons will be more ethical than human beings because human errors cause poor decisions. We don't believe any unmanned system will be able to be perfectly ethical in the battlefield, but I am convinced that they can perform more ethically than human soldiers. Second, they say that their plan can lead to military cohesion within NATO, but that's just not true. Remember, ethics cannot create cohesion. There are just too many other issues that must be resolved for the U.S. to coordinate NATO. We can agree that China has a fairly clear and robust vision of AI and its applications, and is actively exporting that vision. There is absolutely no way that the U.S. can compete without offering a different and compelling vision, and one that involves our friends and allies. But to accomplish the goal as the preferred security partner in AI, the partnership will need to substantiate its agreement with a vision more concrete than just ethical values. There's still legal and strategic interoperability that the affirmative cannot resolve. Not only will countries fail to cooperate, but competing militaries and that utilize autonomous weapons actually have an incentive to disagree over where to draw the line between autonomous AI and other types of AI. Their plan doesn't do enough to address all of the issues they raise. Next, the counterplan. We can see that the U.S., that the UN and NATO could cooperate on the plan. That being said, that's not enough of a reason to endorse their plan. Remember, their plan has fundamental flaws that result in shortcomings and their inability to resolve their problems. They point out. Going on to the DA, they said that tech innovation is already solid, but the U.S. has actually increased funding for AI development and minimalized regulations to promote innovation in the particular field. Researchers for the cyber project at the Belfer Center of Science and to maintain defense and economic superiority, they would never risk scenarios like the disadvantages until now. The United States has taken a light touch approach to regulations, fearing overly burdensome laws will stifle innovation. That would change if we pass the plan. Going on to the K. Finally, I would like to narrow down this debate to the critique. I'll start with answering the perm where they say that we can do both, but it's impossible. Their critique is a direct shot at the rhetoric of securitization against Russia. The negative thinks that's bad. There is no way for both desecuritization and acts of securitization to happen simultaneously. Once they use the strategy of villainizing Russia to exalt their impacts, the K and the plan cannot coexist. Thus reject their perm. Remember, NATO promotes extra-legal militarization that defines their international law and security agreements with in the name of targeting enemies like Russia and China. Considering instead of asking who is in NATO, we ask who isn't. NATO's very existence as a military alliance of Western states is in contradiction to the notion of global solidarity and international agreed structures for peace and security. They use Putin's innovation into Ukraine as a reason for why he's an expansionist, but they fail to realize that NATO's expansion into Eastern Europe, which was an act of securitization, was what was responsible for Russia's reaction. They believe that we should prioritize the plan over our criticism, but our criticism becomes first. We're an indictment of the assumption and presentation of the analysis. If you are persuaded by the argument made in the criticism, then you should reject their plan.
Hi, my name is Delmi. I'm currently in 11th grade and soon to be a senior. I've been debating since my freshman year, so it's been about 3 years now that I've done this. I think the most memorable moment of my season, there's a lot, but the one I find the most amazing is when me and my team traveled to San Francisco and debated at Berkeley. I think that was the most surreal experience, and being able to get that opportunity and bond with my team and be able to share these funny moments and the ones that I will never forget, ones that I will always carry for the rest of my life, especially after, because this was my first time flying on a plane, and I was deathly afraid of the plane crashing, but thank God it didn't, so we'll just see if one day a plane will take me out. It's whatever. And I'll be doing the 2AR, which is the second affirmative rebuttal. And so onto case extensions, human dignity. In the round, we have proven that lethal autonomous weapons violate humans on a whole different scale. Lethal autonomous weapons don't comprehend human emotion nor what it means to be a human. The 1AC outlines this. They violate what it means to be a human. And even if laws do good things, that doesn't like give them the right to decide who should live and who doesn't. They don't have a magnitude of like emotions to know what a person is or who they are or what their background is, but a human does. Like Sharika has said before, humans are able to comprehend other humans, unlike machines that only target them and make them as objects and like only view them as like percentiles and like stuff like that. Machines don't comprehend the gravity of a situation. What is proper justice? It can be too much sometimes when they kill something or they don't. AI doesn't comprehend what value an individual human life has. They lack emotion and ethical judgment, and that makes laws have significant struggles in deciding who gets to live and who doesn't. Onto cohesion, NATO cannot coordinate positions on ethics of AI. Like they are by being able to introduce like standards on AI that allows them to build better connections and build a better alliance so that their stability can form better. And onto the DA, innovation in AI is still stalling even if the U.S. under Trump and Obama was not restricted. Our evidence postdates theirs and takes more of the situation under Biden into account. Our evidence is more relevant, so take that more into account. What we need is a plan that takes action now, and that is the 1AC. We should prioritize the impacts and the ways we can solve them. Establishing ethics is better both in the long run and the short run. It's good for innovation. Case come first and outweighs. Answer to the K. External permutation. If you if you think desecularization is a good thing, you would also believe that actions like the plan that regulate what the military can do is a good idea. The alt does nothing. It's just a criticism of the 1AC, and unlike the 1AC, that actually does something, the NEG can't criticize the 1AC while we can endorse the plan that's set forth by the AF. The perm solves this. The K goes hand in hand with the case, and yeah, the perm solves. At the end, we only want to save people's lives. The only thing we want is to ensure that there are standards on AI. AI doesn't have an understanding of what human value is, and that is detrimental to humans. AI shouldn't be allowed to do whatever it wants. It should be regulated for the good of the people around the world. And as I've said before, the Russian threat is real. So even if we take their criticisms into account, it should never trade off with strategic and ethical concerns. Their case based on rhetoric and theoretical arguments. NATO should be allowed to protect themselves just like any other country or organization under a threat. They should also be able to protect those who feel violated by lethal autonomous weapons. Lethal autonomous weapons should not be allowed to just be set free and do anything. They should have regulations so that mistakes don't happen and the wrong person isn't killed. That's why you should vote AF.
Hi, my name is David Martinez. I'm a senior at Downtown Magnets High School. I've been debating for 4 years now and will be attending Fullerton College, where I will be pursuing a degree in law and public society, as well as debating for Cal State Fullerton. Go Fullerton. I'm sorry, Devin. The highlight of my season is easy to think about. Nationals was such an amazing moment where I got to bond with June and Delmi, two debaters I never really talked to before Nationals. We bonded instantly. Me and June would be up till like 4 a.m. prepping and joking around. We got cheesesteak sandwiches together at like 2 a.m. I know it's not healthy, but it was really good. We would be up by 7 a.m. and do a target run. And best of all, we came up with a motto when we felt hopeless. In the words of Kobe Bryant, "Job's not finished." This has become our motto and saying whenever we see each other, and it truly made Nationals and City Champs the best. But also winning City Championship tournament was such a great moment. And I know we're all ready for the tacos after this round. Trust me, I am too. But I promise we are almost there, so get your voting paddles ready. Okay. First, on the DA, we will concede that existing regulations will start innovation in industry. That being said, this also means that existing regulations and the additional ones like the plan would not lead to the innovation they claim. With this out of the way, we will focus on our final push on the secularization critique, and on the CP, we will concede that the UN can solve for the 1EC. On the K. At the end of this round, you will vote negative to reject the plan. I will answer the perm. They say we can do both, but it's impossible. The critique is a direct shot at the rhetoric of secularization against Russia and China. The negative thinks that's bad. There's no way for both desecularization and access desecularization to happen simultaneously. On the link debate, NATO is a Western project that promotes the extra use of military power through justifications of foreign enemies that we need to be safe from. Now, the affirmative has attempted to convince you that there is a threat out there and that the threat is so imminent that we must find ways in which NATO can work together to maintain a world order. For example, the 1EC's push for NATO cohesion. However, there is no threat that the affirmative has highlighted that would be a reason enough to support the military expansion of NATO. We believe that the 1EC's language and support for the plan is threat construction. That is, the belief of a threat that never existed in the first place, but is created through the language or actions. We believe that voting affirmative means that NATO will be allowed to continue to grow its hegemonic power, all for the name of security, while violating human natural rights that will continue to cause the problems that the 1EC says they will solve for. These are the same justifications that the United States and NATO use to keep military coups in the third world countries like Afghanistan and Iraq. This is seen directly in the cohesion advantage of the 1EC, and it's extended as a primary aspect of the affirmative. Their argument is that the plan leads to no cohesion within NATO, which they say is a reason for Russian intervention that leads to a nuclear war. A critique is a criticism of what an affirmative uses to make the plan seem desirable. The desirability at the end of the debate cannot be proven because the 1EC is constructed with fallacies and with fear-mongering to make the plan look like it's a good idea. NATO has always had disagreements. Their divided opinions on how to support Ukraine was an example. There have been years of examples on divided NATO that still has not led to any nuclear looming with Russia. The plan has been decorated with fear and threat construction to fool policymakers and the audience as they make it seem as an urgency is necessary. At the end of the day, that urgency is problematic because that leads to a never-ending cycle of secularization. The impact is a never-ending cycle of secularization. The justifications for the plan requires a rhetorical violence that we've seen throughout the debate. From the first second of them introducing the plan to the last word they spoke, in order for you and the rest of the policymakers to buy that the plan is a good idea, they need Russia to be a threat so that the plan looks good. The fact that they require a necessity for Russia to be a threat shows that they will constantly need more rhetoric on villainization and painting them as a picture to make the plan look desirable. That rhetoric is bad. It makes Russia feel cornered and forces them into a defensive position that requires them to develop the protective infrastructure like nuclear wars. So understand this. In the status quo, there's not a threat that is presented with Russia. NATO has been divided for years and will continue to be divided. Russia is also fighting another war with Ukraine. The only avenue for Russia to actually feel threatened is if we continue to villainize them like the affirmative team does. Russia threat isn't real. There was no real explanation as for why Russia didn't invade NATO when they've been weak for a while. They've painted a picture that requires you to believe that Russia is the threat for the plan to be a good idea. That rhetoric drives more Russian military innovation because they'll think, oh, they don't think like us, they're a threat, so they're making more weapons, which means that we need more weapons to fight back. That mentality locks in the never-ending arms race that it's inevitable because Russia is only forced to securitize to combat US military actions that are justified by imperialist rhetoric. The fact that the 1EC wouldn't be a good idea if they didn't paint Russia to be a threat shows that the desirability of the plan relies on threat construction. When you vote, it's not just an endorsement of policy they propose, but also their justifications. We've proven the plan strategically uses its advantages to justify expanding NATO military intervention across the world. By extension, they also justify the harms and conflicts that come with that. Even though they want you to believe they reduce harm, they really don't. The alternative would solve for the impact. The never-ending cycle of violent secularization versus the US, NATO, and the rest of the world that is perceived as a threat will be solved. As NATO lowers their guard down through desecularization, Russia will feel that, oh, since NATO is going to relax with us, there's no motive for us to keep developing. Russia develops most of their military arsenal to have a defensive measure versus the West that continuously thinks they're a threat. If NATO stops thinking of Russia as a threat, but potentially as a diplomatic partner, then Russia won't have a need to securitize against NATO either, which leads to a de-escalation of both sides. Thank you.
Okay, I think Michael's going to come up and to run the vote. I just wanted to point out really quickly, before we congratulate the debaters, that Joseph Flores, who planned this debate and is the program director for Lambdol, had me speaking at 1:59, and when I started speaking, it was 2 o'clock. So amazing planning by Joseph. Thank you.
Everyone get your paddles ready. So you know who they're voting for. So green thumbs up is for the AF, and red thumbs down is for the neg. And on the count of 3, please hold up your paddles. Hold up your paddles, please. Or if you don't have a paddle, just put your thumb up or your thumb down. Whoa, this is pretty. I feel like the AF may slightly have the edge, but we got some negs over here too. So, and we have a large swath of negs up there. Ooh, I think I think it looks like the neg, but before I give my thank yous and tell you where lunch is, we're actually gonna have Dr. Joel Lemieux give us his RFD reason for decision at expert opinion. So, Joel.
So I think the fact that there was so much indecision really reflects on like the quality of the debate and the quality of the arguments on both sides. So first, another round of applause for the debaters. They did a really good job. So as it turns out, if I were voting in this debate, not that my decision would, matter any more than anybody else's, right? It's just like one more paddle. But I think I would have voted for the negative team. So congrats. And I think the reason is just because the negative did a really good job of demonstrating what a critique is all about, right? A critique is not just a description of consequences of a plan, but rather it's something that you do in the round. Like they are, in fact, critiquing the rhetoric and discourse of the affirmative. And I thought that the negative team did a really good job of historicizing the reasons, the causes of Russian militarization, or the causes of the use of artificial intelligence, and talking and essentially saying that the plan won't resolve any of the issues that they propose because it participates in some of the same logic that caused those things to begin with. And I think that the affirmative does a really good job of trying to fight back against these things, but it's hard, in debate because there's so many arguments happening at one time, and the affirmative has to choose which things they think are going to be prioritized, and the negative is allowed to capitalize on that kind of time investment. So I just think they did a really, really good job of explaining. If you learned a lot when somebody wrote a critique, it's a good indication that they did a really good job of executing that argument. So congrats to both sides.
Okay, we have a couple of thank yous. First and foremost, can we thank these incredible debaters on stage here? I want to thank Mike Beats for the commentary and Dr. Lemieux for the live flow, as well as our university partners here at USC, Sean Kennedy and the crew that host us. We also have our Cal State Long Beach crew here as one of our tournament hosts every year, Devin Cooper and the team, as well as CSUN, who also hosts us for our city championships. Dr. Lemieux helps put that together. I want to thank Lambdal's incredible board of directors, especially Wade Gentz and Henry Weissman, who helped secure today's sponsors. We have a bunch of sponsors I want to shout out. You will notice that a lot of our sponsors are law firms. A lot of you probably know this, but there's a natural pathway from debate to law, but we also saw pre-med up here, so you can go in any direction from debate, but our sponsors wholly represent a lot of the law firms in Los Angeles: Munger, Tolles & Olson, Mitchell, Sillerberg & Knupp, Loeb & Loeb. I want to thank HKA Global, Southern California Edison, Miller, Barondess, Dentons, and King & Spalding. We also have some foundation supporters here today: the Ralph Parsons Foundation, the Frida C. Fox Family Foundation, the Crail Johnson Foundation, and the Dwight Stewart Youth Fund. Last but not least, I want to thank our Lambdal Fellows. This was our first year of having a Lambdal Fellowship, and they really helped out for this event. And they get, it's an incredible opportunity to kind of get a behind the scenes of what we do at Lambdal, get some college and career prep, and we're going to launch that even to a bigger degree next year with a mentorship program. So I want to shout out Samantha Velasco, Desma Marquez, Angel Duran, Jonathan Meza, AJ Lozano, Ryan Upston, Angela Su, Matthew Smith, Tanya Vasquez, Asnet Pajoa, Norma Delgado, Christopher Enriquez, Irene Bustronostro, Adriana Castro, and Gabriel Vasquez. And last but not least, we have some incredible Lambdal staff that we couldn't do this without. Our program managers, Albert Cardenas and Amber Brooks. Please give it up for them. Please give it up for our volunteers, folks like Matthew and Jordan and all the volunteers that help out for all of these debates. audience members might not know, but we have a whole rookie and novice debate happening today. So there's nearly 100 debaters here that are going to go into rounds after lunch. And I also want to shout out very largely the hardest working program director in town, Joseph Flores, right there. As you might not know, we put a lot of investment and work into this program. We serve this year nearly 500 students from over 30 LA Unified High Schools. We have a goal of reaching over 40 schools and 600 students next year. And we invest about $1,200 per student. So for folks in here that can do, please continue to support this org with your sustained donation. We really appreciate it. It helps us run. But with that said, we're about to end the event. We have an incredible taco bar and the opportunity for you to meet the debaters and kind of hang out and network with each other. It's at the Shineland Forum. So to describe how you get there, go up the stairs, take a left. You'll see a room past the coffee shop. Go through that room onto the patio. There's a patio outside, so up the stairs to the far left, that big patio outside is where we're gonna have tacos for the debaters and our guests. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you at the next debate. Good job. We were like exactly on time.